Marcy, Skylight, Gray, Cliff, and Redfield done. Now the long walk back to the lodge. 3:55 a.m., just signed in. Santanoni Range, let's go. The wind is whipping here in the Seward Range today. Just finished the Macomb slide and my legs are on fire. Well, I fell victim to the floating logs again. Made it to the top of East Dix. Peak number 3 of 5 for today here in the Dix Range. Avalanche Pass. On top of Rocky Peak Bridge. It's like a hurricane up here. Rain and wind here on Tabletop. Whiteface, number 6. Muddy day here on Street and Nye for number 7 and 8. Sunny and blue on Haystack. Algonquin, up in the clouds, number 18. Gothic's number 22. Panther, number 38. Allen, number 45. 7:12 a.m. Big Slide, Adirondack 46er. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast. June 22nd, 2019. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon in the Adirondacks, and I wasn't out on the trail. Instead, I was getting ready to go back to New York City for the week of work ahead, which for me started on Sunday this week. I decided, as I often do, to leave an hour earlier or so than normal and then hit a small mountain on my way out of town, just to get in the woods and hike something since the weather was so nice. I decided to go up one of my favorite mountains, an amazing, unique, and very rugged mountain that most have never hiked and even more have never even heard of, Moose Mountain in Lake Placid. I nicknamed this peak the Lost 9'er, because when I was putting together and developing the Lake Placid 9'er Challenge, I wanted Moose to be the flagship mountain of this challenge since it's so prominent in the town of Lake Placid. It can be seen all around town and all over the high peaks as well. But due to a number of issues and reasons, ultimately I had to leave it off the list, thus becoming the Lost 9'er. Moose Mountain sits to the east of the popular Mackenzie Mountain as it hovers over Lake Placid, offering unparalleled views of the lake from above. The trail to this mysterious mountain is 7 miles round trip with 2,200 feet elevation gain via the SOA 2 Brooks Trail. Rugged terrain filled with blowdown, narrow trails, and a spectacular summit view of Lake Placid, along with 27 different high peaks on one side, while footsteps away to the other side of the summit offers vast and unique views to the north that feel like you're looking at the edge of the world. Standing 3,898 feet, Moose ranks number 50 on the Adirondack 100 highest list, standing taller than numerous official high peaks. I left my house just after lunch, around 12:15, and I drove to the trailhead parking, which isn't exactly a trailhead, but it's parking nonetheless. The parking for this hike is located down the Whiteface Inn Road in Lake Placid at the Jackrabbit Trail. On my way to the trail, I texted a new friend that I recently met at the 46er banquet named Jonathan, who just happened to move to Lake Placid, and I was going to see if he wanted to go for a hike. As you know, I end up hiking solo way more than not due to never being able to find someone to come with me. So when he was interested, I was stoked to have a hiking partner this afternoon. I drove down the Whiteface Inn Road and came to a line of probably 12 to 15 cars parked alongside the Jackrabbit Trail. A very busy day up here indeed. So I parked along the line of vehicles as I waited for Jonathan to arrive, and I had a feeling all of these cars were people hiking the Jackrabbit Trail, which is one way to Mackenzie Mountain, but it's also its own trail altogether. I figured none of these people were hiking Moose, and I told Jonathan that I'd be shocked if we saw anybody on the trail today. I'd be wrong. Anyways, once he arrived, we said our hellos, and the trip began at 1 o'clock. A little later from my normal 4:30 starts, but it'll do. We left our vehicles and started walking just up the road from the parking to Blodgett Road on the left. This is the entrance to what will begin the trail. Once turning left onto Blodgett Road and continuing straight, we came to 2 stone pillars at the beginning of a dirt road, with signs stating it's a private road. Just to the left at this point, nailed to a tree, you'll see a brown rectangular sign with yellow lettering that reads, Trail to Bartlett Pond, Mackenzie Mountain, Loch Bonnie, Moose Mountain. From here, you'll politely and quickly and respectfully walk down the dirt road through the stone pillars for maybe 0.1 or 0.2 miles, along many great camps on your right with the woods to your left. And since this is technically a private road with numerous Lake Placid camps, it's important to be low-key, don't draw attention to yourself, be super respectful, and move quickly so you can get into the woods. Along this stretch of dirt road, on the left there's lots of maple syrup tubes in the woods. You'll actually pass through a number of these throughout the hike. After passing numerous camps, the dirt road will come to a black driveway gate, and similar to before, to the left, just before the gate, you'll see that same brown rectangular trail sign with yellow lettering. This is the point to go into the woods and begin the hike. The trail's covered with leaves, and about 50 yards in, we came to a tent of sorts, where there's a small trail split. The first time I hiked this mountain, at this point I went right, walked for a little while, decided I think this is the wrong way, so I turned back and went back to this junction, and I went left instead. And then I walked even further up into the woods until the trail just ended. So I said, well, that's not right. So I walked back to the junction again, went right for the second time, and eventually figured it out and found the correct trail. So I'm hoping to help you avoid that same confusion. So at this tent, right after you go into the woods, go right. Right. The trail seems like an ATV trail of sorts. It's maybe 10 feet wide, very soft, and has four-wheeler tracks throughout as it winds its way through the woods, sloping downward, heading towards Lake Placid Lake. And looking back on it, since I knew the trail to Moose was on the Shore Owners Association trails, also known as the SOA trails, I should have known from one picture of an old SOA trail map that I had with me that day that I'd be going to the shore. The Lake Shore. Shore Owners Trails. Stupid. This revelation is what ultimately helped me find my way the first time I hiked Moose, though, so I eventually figured it out. So go right at that tent, down to the lake. And after taking the right at the tent where the trail splits, shortly after entering the woods, about 0.2 miles down the trail, we came to the lake and another dirt road. To the right is another private camp, and to the left is an old shed-type building. At this junction, it's time to turn left and pass the shed building, walking along another dirt road with grass growing in the middle of the wheel tracks. One of the many reasons I was unable to include Moose in the LP 9'er challenge was, on top of the walking on a private road element, this first stretch of trail is very confusing. It's like a maze, and it would be very difficult to properly direct people to the trail. And along with not wanting to flood this private area with hikers as well, but I'm going to do my best to properly direct you to the lake trail here on this podcast. Jonathan and I continued walking on this dirt road, and we came to a split in the road, with another camp up in the distance on the left, with a big green field behind it. At this point, we went to the right and came to the beginning of a few very old wooden signs with arrows and faded black painted letters reading Lake Trail. The Lake Trail is what we've been looking for. And having hiked this mountain before, I definitely came to this sign faster this time than the first time around. It was roughly 17 minutes since leaving our car that we came to this Lake Trail sign. So we went left along the trail in the flat woods before coming to another Lake Trail sign, nestled in between two different Lake Placid camps. All right, so now we see another very old, rustic Lake Trail sign pointing us left, away from Lake Placid and away from those people's house. Continue making our way on this maze. Step over some mud here. And here's a white trail marker and some more old wooden Lake Trail signs nailed onto the trees with a yellow arrow. Once on the lake trail, it won't be long until you come to the first set of true trail signs. So after walking and crunching our way through the woods on this leaf-covered trail, exactly 20 minutes after leaving the car, we made it to the first set of Shore Owners Association trail signs. The SOA trail signs are quite different from the brown and yellow DEC signs you're used to seeing in the Adirondacks. These signs are reddish-brown with hand-carved white lettering. At this junction, the sign points right to Whiteface Landing, Minnows Brook, and Falls Brook, while the Two Brooks Junction, Bartlett Pond, and Mackenzie Mountain are to the left. It's important to note here that nothing says Moose. You'll be hiking to the Two Brooks Trail, which as the sign states is 0.5 miles until the Two Brooks Lake Trail Junction. So keep that in mind. And now we are, in my opinion, truly on the trail heading to Moose. The first 0.4 mile maze is complete, and if you're hiking this trail and you made it to this sign, great work. You may now advance to the next level. I'm also willing to bet you'll now understand why it may have been quite difficult to successfully direct potential LP 9'er hikers to this point. I could just see the angry emails already. Anyways, once making the left at this junction, the lake trail stays flat for a period before making its way along a river shortly after starting. It's a soft dirt trail covered in many leaves but still very visible and evident, and extremely well marked with round white SOA trail markers with red lettering on the trees. One of the many reasons it's a shame this mountain wasn't part of the LP9 is because once at this point the trail is super obvious, very well marked, and just a delightful hike all around. So we winded our way along this soft dirt trail along the brook in this very rugged and very dark forest. The beginning of the trail near the road was mostly small hardwood trees with lots of green leaves, beech and maple trees, and this section along the brook, however, feels very remote due to the thick brush and spruces and pines all around the forest. And considering how little human activity this trail and woods get, it's not surprising that it feels extremely remote. The fast-flowing river to the right also has so many pools that would be super enjoyable to take a dip in sometime. And I know I say that a lot on this podcast, and to date I've taken a dip in the water exactly 0 times. Though actually I did stick my feet in the water at the river after Josh and I hiked Giant and Rocky Peak Ridge from the Roaring Brook trailhead a couple weeks ago. So that was great. But yeah, it'd be cool to swim or just sit in. But maybe one day. Though probably not, but maybe. We continued cruising through the woods. The trail had very few sections of mud at this point, which was surprising due to the abundance of rain the past month. So that was a pleasant surprise, nice and dry. And the vibe back here in the woods, kind of dark with the sun shining through the trees, the thick forest, and the sound and the views of the river running alongside you, hiking a trail that's rarely traveled, it's excellent. Super good vibes. The lake trail gains a little bit of elevation gradually, but not much since it's relatively flat. The steep sections come later. Soon we made it the 0.5 miles to the next set of reddish-brown trail signs with white lettering in the Two Brooks Trail Junction. All right, we made it now to the Two Brooks Trail Junction. Mackenzie Mountain's 2 miles away. Bartlett Pond 1.25. The lake trail start is half a mile behind us. A right 2.3 miles to the Moose Mountain summit, along with the Loch Bonnie Junction, but we're not doing that today. So time to go right. And there's another SOA trail marker as we go closer to the river. To the left, the SOA trails head to Mackenzie Mountain, and to the right is the beginning of the Two Brooks Trail up to Moose, 2.3 miles, and the Loch Bonnie Junction, 1.7 miles. Loch Bonnie is another very remote and rarely traveled mountain, which is part of the SOA trail system. Up until this point, the trail markers have been white with red lettering, and once turning right onto the Two Brooks Trail, the markers are now white with blue lettering. Just a small detail to note. And at this point, the trail immediately goes down to cross over the river. Once we arrived at the river, Jonathan and I looked around to find the best way across, contemplating a probably disastrous jump across because the rocks were very slick and the water was high. I'm going to open my trekking poles. I find that a lot easier to cross these sort of sections with trekking poles open. Woo! These rocks are slick. Up the river a little bit, but we made it across. Now to go back to the trail. So we played it safe and walked upstream, maybe 20 yards, and walked on top of 5 or 6 smaller rocks, putting us across the river in thick, sharp trees and brush, which we fought our way to get back to the trail. And we're back on the trail now. Get away from me, bugs. Bugs are brutal right now. And there's an SOA trail marker, gently reminding us, yeah, you're going the right way. We climb up this very wet section here, a little steep, a little muddy, as the bugs devour our souls, our skin, and our blood. Speaking of blood, the bugs were out in full force today, like nobody's business. They didn't just want my blood, they wanted my entire freaking soul. It was brutal. Still no signs of other humans out here today as the Two Brooks Trail made its way further and further from the brook, causing those beautiful river sounds to become more and more distant with every step. This section of the trail, though still quite evident for the most part, does require one to be cautious and observant going from trail marker to trail marker, as the forest is a bit more open now with lots of maple trees, so it would be easier to get off trail here since there's a lot more openness to it. Speaking of maple trees, once across the river, for the next quarter mile or so, you'll be walking under and along many maple syrup tubes out here. So be sure to be careful and very respectful of these. When in doubt, keep following the drainage or part of a trail that feels slightly drainage-like,